Specifications grading. When we teach students, we want them to be able to demonstrate their understanding and skills. And we as teachers want to be able to provide the students with good feedback that we know helps them understand where they're succeeding and where they need to work harder or differently to master the information we're providing for them. So that comes down to grading. And grading is required by our institution. We have to be able to generate a transcript that meets the needs and requirements of the university. And it's also what allows external parties to know, is this student able to move to the next set of courses, to the next year in the curriculum? Is this student able to go to graduate school? Is this student able to graduate at all and become a working veterinarian? Is this the student that I want to hire? And so grades have just traditionally been the way that we have done that. But there are some concerns about grades, and I'm sure many of you could come up with these without having to listen to this talk. So they don't always reflect the student's knowledge or skills. Some students are good at taking exams and some are not. And those that are not good at taking exams oftentimes cannot really demonstrate through that examination what they know or how well they understand it or could use it. Students, as we all know, spend an awful lot of energy trying to get points to get themselves up to the next grade, when we would so much rather they put that energy into doing a project or reading or doing something else that would benefit them more as a learner. And then finally, students' self-worth oftentimes is linked to that grade, whether they think they know it or not. So it is the rare student who's able to say, you know, I got a C in that class, but I'm comfortable that I know that skill well enough that I'm not going to harm an animal if I do it. Most of them are going to say, oh, I got a C, that was horrible, when really C is average. And it's difficult for students sometimes, especially our very high performing students, to be able to pull themselves away from that grade. That grade is them, and that's hard for them to be able to acknowledge in their own minds if they don't do as well as they had hoped. That's partly why competency-based education is being brought forward so much more within the health sciences overall. Human medicine, dentistry, veterinary medicine, all of us are thinking about this. And the idea is that this is something that would permit everyone, society and us, and the student, to know for sure what they really know and what they can really do as they demonstrate it through these competencies. So specifications, or what's often called spec grading, is a specific grading program for a course that sort of gets at that idea of competencies. And the idea is the student is going to be given usually some options, and they're going to complete a set of assignments, oftentimes in assignment bundles. And you have to demonstrate that you know everything in bundle 1 before you can go on to bundle 2. And so oftentimes it'll be you complete a couple of things, then you remediate what you didn't get. You can demonstrate, okay, you've got all of that, then you go on to the next hunk. And so the idea of the specifications is basically a list of competencies or things that you have to be able to show you know or can do before you can move on to a different level, or before you reach a certain grade, or before you leave a given course. So in spec grading, as I said, usually students are going to complete a sequence of assessments, and that assessment could include assignments, that assessment could be quizzes, and they are hierarchical. That's the whole point. Before they get to that last one, they have to have been able to complete everything before it. And so it sort of helps those external parties understand, oh, well, if that person is working on this capstone assignment, I know they can do all the rest of those things because they had to demonstrate that before they were permitted to work on the capstone assignment. Students who are unsuccessful earlier on have to be given the opportunity to rework it somehow to be able to let them reach those higher levels. It is thought that this is a superior system in some ways because it accurately reflects what the student knows and can do at any moment in time. So at any point in the course, you can look and say, this is what the student knows and this is what the student can do, as opposed to having them take a sequence of exams, and it might be that halfway through the course, they're getting a D, and then they just totally rock the final and they end up with a B in the course. That just doesn't give you the same idea of what they know as it would if they had been completing assignments or assessments and you were able to say, well, they have to have known this much stuff to be able to be at this point in the course. And so it really allows the student to focus on what they're learning, and it allows everybody to understand where each student is within the course. A downside is increased faculty time. So you're going to have to be very carefully thinking about, how do I craft this course in a way that creates that hierarchy? What do they do if they are not successful? Do they retake assignments? Do they have other assignments that they do instead? How do I keep track of all of that? How do I regrade all of that? So you need to have a lot of strict record keeping so everybody knows that they're all keeping up, and so that you know where each student is in the course at any given time and when they're at risk of not succeeding in your course entirely. If you look into the literature, here are the steps that they recommend for those of you who are interested in trying this. So step one is to think about, what are your assignments going to be? And assignments really are assessments of what a student knows as they work through that information. So you need to create relevant, meaningful assignments. Generally, we want these to be a reflection of what they will do in their real life, or what we call an authentic assignment. And you want them to be able to demonstrate more than just regurgitation of information. They should be applying or integrating information. And it's great if you can add an aspect of choice. So if you can say, okay, here's the basic assignment, and you can choose the species that you do it in, or something like that. Number two, determine the minimum that has to be done in your class to earn a grade of C or a grade of pass, or whatever your boundary is going to be. So do they have to do X number of assignments? Do they have to do this particular set of assignments? Is there a core set? And then there are elective assignments they can do beyond it. Step three is then determining, if it is not a pass-fail course, if it's a graded course, what do they have to do beyond that bare minimum to get a B? And what do they have to do beyond that to get an A? And so it might be just more of those assignments. It might be assignments in more detail. You get to decide that. Step four, think about what your remediation is going to look like. Are they just retaking things? So for example, if it's quizzes and they have to get a certain percent, if they don't get to that percent, do they just have to go back and write out for you why the right answer is right and the wrong answers are wrong on the questions that they missed? Do they have to completely do something different? That's what you have to create. And then finally, you have to decide, what is the final grade going to look like? Is this an AF course? Is this a pass-fail course? What is this going to look like on the final transcript? And then you have to communicate that to the students, and that can be tricky. So you're going to want to make sure you're doing it in multiple ways. If you see them in person on the first day of class, you're going to want to talk it through with them. Make sure they've got it someplace they can go back and read it again. So it's in the syllabus. Maybe you send out an introductory video. Maybe you send out regular weekly reminders in Canvas or announcements. Give them plenty of ways to be able to review it and think about it as they're seeing themselves progress through the course. So if they get a little bit lost, they can go back and review it and see again where they are. Our Collegiate Committee on Curriculum and Educational Policy, or CCEP, that's our curriculum committee, recently passed a policy for grading options for our DVM courses in year one. So all courses in year one are now either graded pass-fail or are graded AF through some sort of spec or contact grading, where students are permitted to demonstrate in multiple ways how they might earn that grade. And so they are not just getting one mid-quarter and one final exam as a way to demonstrate that they pass. They have to be given opportunities to demonstrate this in other ways where they understand, as they're progressing through the course, where they stand in the course. If they're going to be doing that, you should have both formative and summative assessments and lots of options for how they do it. Again, not just multiple choice exams. And they have to be getting feedback no matter what scheme you use, so they understand where they are, they understand why they might have to be remediating things of that nature. So spec grading is a grading scheme that would meet those criteria. And there are some really good examples of spec grading used at other schools that are in the reference that I've listed here. And if you go to the hard copy, the slides for this presentation, you can click on the link to get to this reference. If you have any questions about spec grading or different grading options in general, I'm Dr. Peggy Root, and I can be reached at rootk001@umn.edu, or you can contact any of us in the CVM Education Support Group, and we can be reached at cvmces at umn.edu.